My coach told my parents I had Olympic potential, then made me change in his office so I could stay focused. When I tried telling him I wasn't sure about some things, he smiled and said, "Don't be so sensitive. Real athletes don't let modesty get in the way of success." I didn't say a word. That was 8 months ago. Yesterday, he was removed from the pool deck in silence. I was 16 when Coach Richardson told my parents I had Olympic potential. He pulled them aside after one of my meets and said I had the kind of drive you can't teach. And just like that, I was pulled into private sessions, off-season training, the works. My parents rearranged everything. They were so proud. I tried to be at first, and I liked the attention. He gave me my own locker, different gear, a special supplement routine. He'd point at me during practice and say, "That's how it's done." But then things got weird with the team. A few girls who used to cheer for me now barely made eye contact. One of the guys said something under his breath in the locker room and the rest laughed, but when I asked what was so funny, they all shut up. The next day, a girl on the relay team pulled me aside and told me I should start paying attention. I asked what she meant, but she just said, "Don't be alone with him." That night, I brought it up to Coach. He said jealousy made people nasty, and that the ones who couldn't keep up always had something to say. I remember feeling embarrassed for even bringing it up. After that, he changed my training time again, this time to even later. My mom asked if I was okay with it, and I told her I didn't want to fall behind. Coach made it seem like one missed practice could ruin everything, and I believed him. Then came the office changes. He said the team locker room was too loud and not secure enough. Said I should start changing in his office so I could keep my stuff safe and stay focused. I did it because I didn't want to seem difficult. And then the comments started. He would critique my body, the angle of my hips in a dive, how tight my suit looked, all framed as coaching. Sometimes his hand would linger too long during form correction, but every time I tensed, he'd back off and tell me not to be so sensitive, that real athletes didn't let modesty get in the way of success. When I tried telling my parents I wasn't sure about some things, my dad just said it sounded like he believed in me more than anyone else had, and that if I wanted to quit, fine, but that it would be the biggest mistake of my life. I stopped trying to explain. I just trained. One night during late laps, he told me I needed to toughen up and pushed me to swim until I threw up. When I stumbled out of the water, shaking, he handed me a drink and told me that pain separates winners from dreamers. I went home and cried in the shower. My grades started slipping. My friends stopped texting. I didn't even notice at first. My whole life became this tunnel of eat, train, sleep, repeat. Then one of the older swimmers came back to visit. She didn't say hi to Coach, didn't even look at him. When she saw me with him by the pool after practice, she asked if I could talk. She said she used to be the favorite too, that the gear, the training, the praise, it all came with a cost. That night I went home and pulled up old team rosters. There was always one name every year who suddenly stopped showing up mid-season. Always someone Coach had praised loudly, publicly. The next day after practice, I waited for him to leave, then doubled back and tried the lock on his office. It was open. Inside was a filing cabinet. The top drawer was full of folders, each labeled with a name. Some of the names I recognized. Inside each were photos, practice logs, notes about injuries and mental state. There were medical records, even a few handwritten letters, stuff that felt way too personal. My hands were shaking. Then I found mine. Pages about my parents, my schedule, my mental resilience. Notes like responds well to pressure and increased dependency through isolation. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would crack my chest open. I started taking pictures of everything. I didn't even know what I'd do with them. I just needed proof that I wasn't insane. I was almost done when I heard the door open behind me. He said he figured I'd still be here. Said he brought my favorite recovery drink. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. I had no plan. My phone was still in my hand, the photos still open. He asked me what I was doing in his office. I lied. Said I was looking for an extra suit. He smiled but didn't move. Said I shouldn't be snooping where I don't belong. I tried to walk past him. He blocked me, then told me to sit down. I told him I needed to go. He took a step forward. I bolted. I don't even remember how I got home, just that I locked my door and threw up in the sink. My mom asked if I was okay, and I told her I had a migraine. She handed me an ice pack and didn't ask anything else. That night, I stayed up scrolling through the photos. I wanted to send them to someone, but I didn't know who would believe me. I didn't know how much time I had. The next morning, Coach texted me and said he needed to talk, that we should clear the air. I hid the photos in a folder on my locked phone, my hands still trembling from the drink and the panic. My mind raced between running away or trying to act normal. I couldn't think straight. Coach blocked the door completely now, his smile never reaching his eyes. He gestured toward the chair across from his desk, that same fake warmth in his voice when he told me we should talk this through like adults. My stomach churned. I mumbled something about leaving my water bottle in the locker room and pushed past him before he could react. My legs carried me faster than they ever had in the pool. Behind me, I heard him call my name, but I didn't stop. In the parking lot, my mom's car idled by the curb. I threw myself into the passenger seat and immediately bent forward, pretending to retch. She rubbed my back and asked if I'd pushed too hard again. I nodded, letting her believe it was just another tough practice. The next morning brought a notification that made my blood run cold. A DM from Catherine, a swimmer who'd quit the team 2 years ago. Her message was short. "I saw you leaving his office last night. We need to talk." I skipped first period and met her at a coffee shop downtown. Catherine's hands wrapped around her mug like she needed the warmth. She looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. She told me about the special training, the private sessions, the way Coach had made her feel chosen. Then came the gradual isolation, the comments about her body, the touches that lasted too long. She'd found folders too, she said. Photos of girls in swimsuits that weren't from official meets, notes about their personal lives. She'd tried to tell people, but Coach had already planted seeds of doubt about her mental state, her dedication, her honesty. My phone buzzed repeatedly during our conversation. Coach's name lit up the screen with message after message, each one friendlier than the last, asking if I wanted to make up the training time I'd missed, reminding me about the upcoming qualifier, saying he was worried about me. I deleted each message, but not before taking screenshots. Back home, I transferred everything to my laptop, then copied it all to an old USB drive I found in my desk drawer. The paranoia felt justified now. While organizing the files, I noticed something odd in the team's shared Google album. Photos from recent practices were disappearing. I watched in real time as Coach deleted image after image, particularly ones where he appeared close to any of the girls. My heart pounded as I quickly downloaded what I could before they vanished. I texted Victoria from my relay relay team, trying to sound casual. Asked if she'd noticed anything weird with the photo album. Her response came back instantly. "You're not dragging me into this." The walls felt like they were closing in. At dinner, my mom commented on how quiet I'd been lately. She wondered aloud if Coach was pushing me too hard, if maybe we should talk to him about scaling back. I pushed food around my plate and gave vague answers about being stressed about school. That night, I backed up everything to 3 different places. Then I created a fake folder filled with random workout photos and motivational quotes. If I ever had to go back into that office, I'd leave it where mine had been. Let him think he'd won. Another swimmer, Kat, posted on Instagram that night. A black background with white text. "The weight of secrets you're not ready to share." Most people probably thought it was about boyfriend drama. I recognized it for what it was. A quiet acknowledgement that she knew too. The next few days blurred together. My mom came home from work excited, practically glowing. Coach had called her about an amazing opportunity. A training camp with college scouts, exclusively for his most promising athletes. Of course, I was his first choice. She'd already said yes. I spent hours going through old emails, looking for signs I'd missed. Found one from a year ago where Coach had attached a motivational document about dedication and trust. Reading it now made my skin crawl. Every line felt calculated, designed to make me dependent on his approval. The team group chats started changing. I'd refresh and find myself removed from certain threads. When I asked Nathan about it at practice, he shrugged and said Coach was reorganizing communication channels for efficiency. In the hallway after chemistry, I overheard Johnny telling John that I'd become obsessed with taking Coach down because he'd criticized my form. They laughed about how some people couldn't handle real coaching. My face burned, but I kept walking. Desperate, I made an appointment with the school counselor. Mrs. McJonathan listened patiently as I tried to explain without revealing too much. She nodded sympathetically and suggested that elite athletic pressure could certainly feel overwhelming. Perhaps I should consider whether competitive swimming was really right for me. The conversation ended with her offering me a stress ball and a pamphlet about time management. I knew I had to be smarter. The next day, I approached Coach with rehearsed humility, apologized for overreacting, said I'd been stressed about grades. His whole demeanor shifted. He patted my shoulder and said he knew I'd come around. Real champions always did. With access restored, I waited for my chance. During a team meeting, I volunteered to grab extra kickboards from his office. My hands moved quickly through his desk drawers until I found it. Another USB drive labeled with a name I recognized. Catherine's name, written in his neat handwriting. I confronted Catherine with it that evening. She broke down completely, sobbing that she'd thought she was alone, that no one else had experienced what she had. We sat in her car for hours as she told me everything. The gifts, the special attention, the gradual escalation, the way he'd convinced her that speaking up would ruin her future. Back home, I created a spreadsheet. Names, dates, gifts, photos, every pattern I could identify. Catherine's story overlaid with mine perfectly, down to the timeline of isolation tactics. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed more. During practice the next week, I noticed Coach paying extra attention to Catherine, one of the younger swimmers. She had that same eager smile I'd once worn, that desperation to please. When she caught me watching, she approached me by the water fountain. Her words hit me like a punch. "Is he doing it to you too?" I chose my words carefully, showed her how to document things safely, how to keep evidence in places he couldn't access. Her relief at not being crazy was painful to witness. Coach must have noticed her pulling away because the next day I received a message that made my blood run cold. Just 2 words: be careful. After practice, Jane found me in the parking lot. She'd seen Coach corner me behind the pool equipment, heard him raising his voice. She wanted to know if I was okay. I told her I was handling it, but the concern in her eyes said she wasn't buying it. My mom noticed the change in me. She mentioned it to Coach during pickup, worried about my sudden mood shifts. He spun a story about social media pressure and how it affected young athletes, suggested maybe limiting my phone time would help me focus. My mom came home with new screen time rules, thinking she was helping. The patterns became clearer every day. I watched him use the exact same phrases on Catherine that he'd used on me. The same concerned touches, the same private meetings, the same gradual separation from the team. It was like watching a replay of my own story. Then Katie, Catherine's older sister, reached out. She'd noticed changes in her sister and remembered similar changes when their cousin had been on the team years ago. We met at a park where she shared her suspicions, her guilt at not speaking up sooner. I taught her what Catherine had taught me. Document everything, keep it offline, trust no one who might report back to him. The network grew slowly, carefully, each person carrying their own burden of proof. My evidence files grew larger. I stored them in an encrypted email account, always logging out completely. The paranoia was exhausting but necessary. One slip and he'd destroy everything. I sent an anonymous tip to the former assistant coach who'd left abruptly last year. No response came, but he started following my burner Instagram account. Small victories felt huge in this war of inches. The former assistant coach's follow meant someone else was watching, someone who might understand. I spent the weekend creating a detailed timeline, cross-referencing dates from Catherine's USB with my own experiences. The overlap was undeniable. Coach had refined his methods over years, each girl a test case for the next. Monday morning brought a new development. Coach announced changes to the team structure during practice. He'd be implementing a mentorship program where senior swimmers would guide younger ones. The pairings he announced made my stomach drop. He'd matched himself with Catherine for advanced technique development. The other assignments seemed random, but I recognized the pattern, isolating his target while appearing supportive. I caught Catherine after practice, suggesting we review her stroke technique together since I'd been through the same training. She agreed eagerly, grateful for the help. We worked in the shallow end while Coach watched from his office window. I demonstrated proper form while quietly explaining how to create backup email accounts, how to forward messages to herself, how to screenshot without notification alerts. That evening, my mom found me organizing swimming medals in my room. She sat on my bed and mentioned how proud she was of my dedication. Then she asked about the training camp Coach had mentioned. I told her I wasn't sure about going, that I needed to focus on school. Her face fell. She reminded me how hard they'd worked to support my swimming, how this opportunity might not come again. The guilt was suffocating, but I held firm. She left my room disappointed, and I heard her telling my dad about my attitude downstairs. He came up later, explaining how Coach had called him personally to discuss my potential. The camp would have college scouts, he said. I'd be stupid to miss it. I created another encrypted folder that night, labeling it Insurance. Inside went recordings I'd made of Coach during practice, his voice carrying across the pool as he praised Catherine's form a little too enthusiastically. The way he touched her shoulder, adjusted her posture, lingered just a second too long. It was all there, documented with timestamps. Tuesday's practice brought a surprise. A woman I didn't recognize sat in the bleachers, watching intently. Coach's demeanor shifted immediately. He kept his distance from everyone, barking instructions from the pool deck without his usual hands-on corrections. I later learned she was from the district's athletic department, conducting routine observations. After practice, I overheard him talking to her near the office. He mentioned how some swimmers had been struggling with the pressure of competition, how he was concerned about their mental health affecting team morale. He didn't name names, but his eyes found mine across the pool area. Catherine texted me that night. She'd been thinking about everything and wanted to help. We met at a different coffee shop where she handed me a flash drive. On it were emails between Coach and her parents from 2 years ago, discussing her concerning behavior and inability to handle criticism. He'd laid groundwork to discredit her before she'd even realized what was happening. I added her evidence to my growing archive. The pattern was clear: praise, isolation, inappropriate attention, then character assassination when girls pulled away or spoke up. But knowing the pattern wasn't enough. I needed something current, something undeniable. Wednesday brought that opportunity. Catherine approached me before practice, shaking. Coach had texted her about staying late for individual training. She showed me the message, friendly on the surface, but with an undertone that made her uncomfortable. I helped her craft a response about having a family commitment. Then I suggested she forward the entire exchange to her sister. Coach's reaction was immediate. During practice, he criticized Catherine's form repeatedly, making her demonstrate dives over and over until she was exhausted. When she finally missed one badly, he announced to the team that this was why individual training was so important. Some people just didn't want to put in the work. I watched Catherine's face crumble. After practice, I found her crying in the bathroom. I helped her document everything: the texts, his reaction, the public humiliation. She took photos of the bruises forming on her legs from hitting the water wrong during her forced repetitions. That night, I discovered Coach had created a new team group chat without me. Screenshots from Victoria showed him discussing my disruptive influence and how I was trying to turn teammates against him. He suggested that anyone who wanted to succeed should limit their interaction with me. The isolation tactic was familiar, but seeing it happen in real time was different. I watched my support system erode as teammates who'd known me for years suddenly avoided eye contact. Only a few held firm: Catherine, obviously, and surprisingly Nathan, who sent me a private message saying he'd noticed things too, but didn't know what to do. Thursday's mail brought the official training camp invitation. My parents were thrilled. The packet included testimonials from previous attendees about how Coach Richardson had changed their lives, how his dedication went beyond normal coaching. Reading between the lines now, the testimonials felt like warnings. I spent hours researching the camp location. It was 2 states away, isolated, with limited cell service. The thought of being there alone with him made me physically ill. I told my parents I needed time to decide. My dad's frustration was palpable. He accused me of throwing away everything they'd sacrificed for. During Friday's practice, I noticed Katie watching from the parking lot. She wasn't allowed inside. Coach had banned non-team members from practices for safety reasons, but she waited for her sister religiously now. Her presence seemed to give Catherine strength. Coach noticed too. He made comments about helicopter siblings, how some families couldn't let their swimmers grow up, but he was more careful now, maintaining professional distance when others were watching. I used the opportunity to check his office while he was distracted with pool maintenance. The filing cabinet was locked now, but his computer was on. I photographed the screen showing his calendar, multiple individual training sessions, scheduled with different girls, always during times when the facility would be empty. Saturday brought an unexpected ally. The janitor who cleaned the pool area pulled me aside after practice. He'd worked there for 15 years, he said, and had seen this pattern before. He couldn't say much. He needed his job, but he suggested I look into a swimmer named Sarah from 5 years ago. Then he walked away, pretending we'd never spoken. I found Sarah's social media that night. She was in college now, studying psychology. Her old swimming photos stopped abruptly her junior year. I sent her a message from my anonymous account, keeping it vague but mentioning Coach Richardson. Her response came within minutes. I've been waiting for someone to reach out. We video called that night. Sarah's story was eerily familiar, but with a darker ending. She'd tried to report Coach to the school board, but he'd already convinced everyone she was unstable, jealous of younger swimmers getting attention. Her parents had believed him over her. She'd quit swimming entirely, lost her scholarships, spent years in therapy. She offered to help however she could, but warned me to be smarter than she'd been. Document everything, she said, but don't go alone. Build a coalition. Make it impossible to dismiss as one troubled girl's vendetta. Sunday was team photo day. Parents packed the pool area, and Coach was in full performance mode. He praised every swimmer, highlighted their achievements, played the part of dedicated mentor perfectly. I watched him position himself next to Catherine for the team photo, his hand on her shoulder in what would look like innocent encouragement to anyone who didn't know better. During the parent social after photos, my mom cornered me about the training camp. The deadline to respond was approaching. I told her I was worried about missing school, about my grades suffering. She said Coach had already talked to my teachers, that they'd all agreed to help me catch up. The walls were closing in. That evening, I met with Catherine, and Katie at a diner across town. We compared notes, created backup plans, discussed next steps. Katie had been researching the school's policies on coach conduct. There were channels for reporting, but they required evidence and multiple witnesses. We had evidence. We were building witnesses. But Coach was smart. Nothing he'd done was explicitly illegal, just inappropriate enough to make us uncomfortable, but not clear enough for adults to take seriously. We needed something more. Monday's practice brought that something. Coach announced that due to scheduling conflicts, he'd be conducting some training sessions at his home pool. He had a list of swimmers who'd been selected for this honor. Catherine's name was on it, so was mine. The reaction from parents was mixed. Some were thrilled their children were getting such personalized attention. Others, like Katie, were visibly uncomfortable. She pulled her sister from practice immediately, citing a sudden family emergency. Coach's mask slipped for just a moment. I saw rage flash across his face before he recovered, expressing concern for Catherine's family situation. He hoped everything was okay, he said, but reminded everyone that commitment was crucial for success. That night, I forwarded everything to the former assistant assistant coach's email. This time, he responded. He wanted to meet in person, but was scared of retaliation. We agreed on a public place the next evening. Tuesday's meeting revealed more than I'd expected. The assistant coach, Mark, had left after witnessing coach's behavior, but being told by administration that without concrete evidence, nothing could be done. He'd been threatened with legal action if he spread unfounded rumors. He still had emails documenting his concerns and the administration's responses. I asked if he'd be willing to come forward now. He hesitated, then nodded. He was tired of carrying the guilt of leaving other girls in danger, but he warned me that coach had connections throughout the district. This wouldn't be easy. Wednesday morning, I woke to find my training camp acceptance had been submitted without my knowledge. My parents were ecstatic. Coach had taken the liberty of handling the paperwork since I'd been too stressed to decide. The camp was in 2 weeks. Panic set in. I confronted my parents, but they saw it as coach going above and beyond to help me. My protests were dismissed as teenage anxiety. My dad even suggested I should be grateful for such a dedicated coach. At practice, coach announced my acceptance to the team, framing it as an honor for the entire program. The pressure to attend was now public. Backing out would mean disappointing everyone. I felt trapped in a way I hadn't before. After practice, several swimmers approached me privately. They'd noticed things too. Comments that felt wrong, touches that lingered, the way coach's favorites always seemed to burn out or quit. The coalition Sarah had mentioned was forming naturally. Thursday brought a breakthrough. One of the parents who'd been watching practices noticed coach's pattern of isolation. She pulled me aside and asked directly if I felt safe. I chose my words carefully, saying I was uncomfortable with some training methods. She nodded knowingly and said she'd be having conversations with other parents. The tide was turning, but slowly. Coach must have sensed it because his behavior shifted. He became more careful, more professional, but also more insistent about the training camp. He pulled my parents aside after practice, expressing concern about my commitment to the sport. That night, I created a comprehensive document outlining everything: dates, times, witnesses, patterns of behavior. I encrypted it and sent copies to Catherine, Sarah, Mark, and the concerned parent. If something happened to me at that camp, there would be a record. Friday's practice was tense. Coach maintained strict professionalism, but I caught him watching me constantly. He announced that the home pool training sessions were canceled due to insurance issues. The relief on several faces was visible. After practice, my mom asked why I seemed happier. I told her coach had been giving me space to focus on technique instead of constant correction. She was pleased, mentioning how she'd been worried about my stress levels. The irony wasn't lost on me. Saturday brought another ally. The district athletic supervisor who'd observed practice earlier returned unannounced. She pulled several swimmers aside for private conversations, including me. I was careful with my words, mentioning only that some training methods felt intense and that individual sessions made me uncomfortable. She took notes without expression, thanked me for my honesty, and moved on to the next swimmer. But I noticed her watching coach for the rest of practice with a different kind of attention. The weekend was spent in preparation. Our group met at Sarah's apartment. She'd driven down to help. We organized evidence, created timelines, prepared statements. The training camp was in 10 days. We had that long to make something happen. Sunday's revelation came from an unexpected source. Catherine's cousin, the one who'd been on the team years ago, finally agreed to talk. She'd never told anyone the full story, but seeing it happen to Catherine had broken her silence. Her evidence was damning. Text messages that crossed clear boundaries, photos he'd taken during form analysis that felt invasive. We added her testimony to our growing file. The pattern spanned at least 6 years, possibly more. Each girl's story reinforced the others. We weren't crazy. We weren't overreacting. We were survivors of a system that had failed to protect us. Monday arrived with new urgency. Coach announced that the training camp roster was final. Any swimmer who didn't attend would be removed from consideration for leadership positions next season. The manipulation was blatant now, but dressed up as motivation. I watched him work the room, parents eating up his dedication, his passion for the sport. They saw a man who cared too much, worked too hard, pushed too firmly perhaps, but all for their children's benefit. They didn't see the predator hiding behind the whistle. That evening, Mark forwarded me an email chain from years ago. Other coaches in the district had raised concerns about Richardson's methods. The discussions had been shut down by administration, citing his excellent record and lack of formal complaints. The network of complicity ran deep. Tuesday's practice felt different. More parents were staying to watch. The athletic supervisor returned with a colleague. Coach's movements were constrained, his usual patterns disrupted. He couldn't isolate anyone with so many eyes watching. After practice, he cornered me by the equipment room. His voice was low, controlled, but threatening. He knew what I was doing, he said. He'd seen this before. Jealous swimmers trying to tear down successful programs. It wouldn't work. No one would believe a bitter teenager over an established coach. I recorded the entire interaction on my phone, hidden in my gym bag. His words were carefully chosen to avoid explicit threats, but the menace was clear. When he finished, I walked away without responding. Let him wonder what I knew, what I had, what I planned. Wednesday brought the first crack in his armor. The school board announced a review of all athletic programs, citing recent concerns about student welfare. It wasn't specifically about swimming, but the timing wasn't coincidental. Our reports were being heard, even if not acknowledged directly. Coach's response was predictable. He held a team meeting about how outside forces were trying to destroy what we'd built. He spoke about loyalty, about standing together against baseless accusations. Some parents nodded along, others looked uncomfortable. The divide was becoming visible. That night, I sat with my parents and finally told them I wouldn't be attending the training camp. My mom started to protest, but I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the messages. Not the worst ones, but enough to plant doubt. I explained how uncomfortable I felt, how other girls had felt the same way. My dad's first response was anger, at me for not saying something sooner, at coach for making me uncomfortable, at himself for not seeing it. My mom was quieter, processing. They agreed I didn't have to go to the camp, but they weren't ready to believe the full truth yet. Thursday's practice was subdued. Word had spread about the review, about parents asking questions. Coach maintained his professional facade, but cracks were showing. He snapped at swimmers for minor mistakes, forgot the practice plan midway through, kept checking his phone obsessively. After practice, 3 more swimmers approached our group. They'd experienced varying levels of inappropriate behavior, comments about their bodies, requirements to train alone with him, subtle threats when they'd tried to pull back. Our coalition was growing stronger. Friday brought unexpected news. The training camp had been postponed indefinitely due to administrative concerns. Coach announced it with barely controlled fury, blaming bureaucracy and people who didn't understand elite athletic training. Several parents complained complained loudly about the inconvenience, but I saw relief on young faces around the pool. Girls who'd been dreading the camp but couldn't articulate why. Parents who'd been uncomfortable but didn't want to seem unsupportive. The postponement gave everyone breathing room. The weekend was crucial. Our group met with a lawyer Sarah had found, someone who specialized in athletic abuse cases. She reviewed our evidence and confirmed what we'd suspected. While concerning, most of it fell into gray areas that would be difficult to prosecute, but it was enough for administrative action if presented properly. We spent hours preparing a formal complaint. Every incident documented, every pattern highlighted, every witness statement included. The lawyer helped us frame it in terms the school board couldn't ignore. Liability issues, student safety concerns, potential lawsuits if they failed to act. Sunday night, I barely slept. Tomorrow, we would submit the complaint. Tomorrow, everything would change. Coach would know it was me. I was the only one with access to some of the evidence. The retaliation would be swift and vicious. But I thought about Catherine, about the next girl who would take her place, about all the girls who'd come before us. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling, fitting weather for what felt like a funeral. The death of my swimming career, perhaps, but also the end of Coach's reign of manipulation. Catherine picked me up early. We met the others at the lawyer's office. With shaking hands, I signed my name to the complaint. Catherine signed next, then Sarah, then Mark. Catherine's sister signed as her guardian. The cousin signed. 3 other swimmers added their names. 8 witnesses to patterns of grooming and inappropriate conduct spanning years. The lawyer would file it with the school board that afternoon. Copies would go to the district athletic department, the state swimming association, and child protective services. There was no taking it back now. At practice that afternoon, I swam like I had nothing left to lose, because I didn't. Coach watched me with calculating eyes, perhaps sensing the shift in energy. He said nothing during practice, maintaining distance from everyone. As we packed up to leave, he called my name, asked me to help him with equipment in the storage room, the same request he'd made to dozens of girls over the years. This time, I said no, loudly, clearly, in front of everyone. The silence that followed was deafening. Then I turned and walked out, Catherine beside me, Katie waiting in the parking lot, a growing group of supporters surrounding us. Behind us, Coach stood frozen, perhaps realizing for the first time that his power was an illusion we no longer believed in. The next morning, I woke to find 17 missed calls from my dad. He'd received a voicemail from Coach Richardson expressing deep concern about my mental state and suggesting I might benefit from professional help. My dad's voice shook as he relayed the message, torn between defending me and wondering if Coach might have a point. I showed him the formal complaint we'd filed. His face went through several transformations as he read: disbelief, anger, then a crushing realization that he'd failed to protect me. He sat heavily on my bed, aging years in minutes. At school, the atmosphere had shifted. Word traveled fast in our small community. Some teammates avoided me completely, while others offered subtle nods of support. In the hallway between classes, I found a note slipped into my locker. Thank you for being brave, someone who couldn't be. Practice that afternoon was surreal. An interim coach had been assigned, a woman from the district who maintained professional distance from everyone. She ran drills mechanically, consulting a clipboard frequently. Coach Richardson was nowhere to be seen, though his presence lingered in every corner of the pool. Catherine approached me during warm-ups, her eyes red-rimmed. Her parents had grilled her for hours after receiving a call from the school board. She'd finally told them everything. Her mother had cried. Her father had threatened to handle things himself before her mother calmed him down. The team meeting after practice was tense. The interim coach read a prepared statement about maintaining focus during transitions and respecting the investigation process. Several parents demanded answers. Others sat in stunned silence. The divide was clear: those who'd suspected something and those who refused to believe it. That evening, Sarah called with news. 2 more former swimmers had contacted her after hearing about the complaint. Their stories followed the same pattern: special attention, isolation, inappropriate boundaries, then character assassination when they tried to pull away. She was creating a master timeline showing the pattern over 8 years. Wednesday brought the first real consequence. The school board announced Coach Richardson had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The carefully worded statement mentioned serious allegations requiring thorough review. My phone exploded with messages, some supportive, many accusatory. At practice, the team was in chaos. Half the swimmers defended Coach, insisting this was a witch hunt. The other half remained silent, but I saw recognition in their eyes. The interim coach struggled to maintain order as arguments broke out during drills. Nathan pulled me aside after practice. He'd been documenting things too, he admitted. Little things that seemed off, comments Coach made about female swimmers when they weren't around, the way he'd assign himself to spot certain girls during weight training. He handed me a notebook filled with dates and observations. Thursday's mail brought a certified letter from Coach Richardson's lawyer. It warned against defamation and suggested I reconsider my false allegations before permanent damage was done to his reputation. My hands shook as I read it. The lawyer Sarah had found assured me this was a scare tactic, but it felt like a punch to the gut. My mom found me crying in my room that night. She held me while I finally told her everything, not just the facts we'd filed in the complaint, but how it felt, the confusion, the self-doubt, the gradual realization that something was deeply wrong. She listened without interrupting, then called in sick to work the next day to be with me. Friday's practice was smaller. Several parents had pulled their daughters from the team until things were resolved. Catherine was among them, though she texted me constantly for updates. The interim coach announced that assistant coaches from other district teams would be helping until a permanent solution was found. After practice, I discovered someone had scratched "liar" into my car door. Security footage was conveniently corrupted for that time period. I filed a report, knowing nothing would come of it. Catherine drove me home, both of us checking mirrors more than necessary. The weekend brought unexpected support. A local therapist who specialized in athlete wellness reached out through Sarah, offering free sessions to anyone affected by the situation. Several of us took her up on it. Sitting in that circle, hearing similar stories from different voices, I felt less alone than I had in months. Monday's school board meeting was packed. Parents, swimmers, and community members filled every seat. The board president read a statement about taking all allegations seriously while ensuring due process. Public comment was limited to 3 minutes per person. I watched as parent after parent spoke, some defending Coach, calling him a pillar of the community, others expressing concern about the patterns described in the allegations. accusations. When victims tried to speak, they were reminded that specifics couldn't be discussed during an open investigation. Mark testified about his reasons for leaving, careful to stick to facts rather than accusations. His voice was steady, but I saw his hands trembling. When he finished, half the room applauded while the other half glared. Tuesday brought news that shook everyone. The investigation had uncovered financial irregularities in the swim program. Money meant for equipment and travel had been redirected to private accounts. It wasn't theft exactly, more like creative accounting that benefited Coach personally. Suddenly, even his defenders looked uncertain. The interim coach announced that the season would continue, but all competitions were optional. College scouts would be informed of the situation. My Olympic dreams, already fractured, crumbled completely. But somehow, I felt lighter. Wednesday's practice saw more empty lanes. The team was hemorrhaging members. Those who remained swam in tense silence. I focused on my strokes, finding peace in the rhythm. Swimming had been my life for so long. I was determined not to let him take that too. After practice, the janitor who'd first warned me about Sarah stopped me in the parking lot. He pressed a flash drive into my hand. Security footage, he said, from dates that might be relevant. He'd been collecting it for years, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. Then he walked away before I could thank him. The footage was damning. Nothing explicit, but patterns clear as day. Coach entering his office with different girls, emerging much later. Girls leaving his office visibly upset. Him deleting security files on specific dates. Sarah's lawyer said it was exactly what we needed. Thursday brought a break in team unity. 3 swimmers who'd been Coach's most vocal defenders approached me privately. They'd been comparing notes and realized they'd all been told they were special and different from the others. The same phrases, the same private promises, the same gradual boundary pushing. Their worldview had shattered. By Friday, the investigation had expanded. Former swimmers from Coach's previous position were being contacted. The pattern went back further than we'd imagined. 15 years, 3 different schools, always leaving under vague circumstances with glowing recommendations. The school board called an emergency meeting. They'd found enough to take immediate action. Coach Richardson's contract was terminated for violation of professional boundaries and fiduciary misconduct. No criminal charges would be filed. The evidence didn't meet that threshold, but he was banned from coaching in the district. The announcement felt anticlimactic. After everything, he'd simply lose his job. He'd move to another state, probably find another pool, another group of girls to groom, but we'd created a record. Future employers who did their due diligence would find it. Saturday's practice was different. A new coach had been hired, a woman with excellent credentials and a reputation for maintaining appropriate boundaries. She introduced herself simply, acknowledged the difficult situation, and promised to earn our trust through actions, not words. I swam my laps feeling strange. The weight I'd carried for months was lifting, but underneath was exhaustion. My phone had dozens of messages, some calling me a hero, others calling me worse things. I ignored them all. Sunday brought closure of sorts. The school held a meeting for affected families. Counseling resources were offered. New policies were announced. No one-on-one training, open door requirements, regular supervision, things that should have existed before. I sat with my parents as administrators apologized for the systemic failures. My mom gripped my hand tightly. My dad stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. They'd believed in the system that failed me. That guilt would take time to process. After the meeting, Catherine, Sarah, and I met at our usual diner. We didn't talk about Coach or investigations or what came next. We talked about movies, homework, normal teenage things. It felt like learning to breathe again. Monday's return to school was easier than expected. The story had run its course through gossip channels. New drama had replaced it. I was old news, which suited me fine. In calculus, a girl I'd never spoken to slipped me a note. My sister swam for him 5 years ago. Thank you. At practice, the new coach ran efficient professional sessions. No special attention, no private meetings, no comments about our bodies beyond technical corrections. It felt strange and wonderful. I'd forgotten what normal coaching looked like. By Wednesday, I'd made a decision. I submitted my resignation as team captain, recommending Catherine as replacement. Leadership felt too heavy right now. I wanted to swim for the joy of it, not for glory or recognition. The new coach accepted my decision without judgment. She'd reviewed everyone's files, she said, and understood this was a time for healing. Several colleges had inquired about the situation. She promised to handle those conversations honestly, but protectively. Friday marked 1 month since everything exploded. I stood at the pool's edge, watching newer swimmers practice their dives. Some had joined after coach left, drawn by the promise of a fresh start. They'd never know what we'd prevented them from experiencing. Catherine returned to practice that day. She looked smaller somehow, but determined. We swam laps together in companionable silence. Her sister watched from the bleachers, still protective, but learning to let go. The final school board meeting about the situation was scheduled for Monday. They'd present their findings and new policies publicly. I chose not to attend. Sarah would go and report back. I had calculus homework and a history paper due. Normal problems felt like a gift. That weekend, I cleaned out my swimming memorabilia. Medals from meets where coach had praised me felt tainted. Photos where he stood too close went in the trash. I kept the ones with teammates, the moments of genuine joy between the manipulation. My parents helped, asking permission before discarding anything. They'd been reading about grooming, attending support groups for parents. Their guilt was a living thing, but they were channeling it into advocacy for better oversight. Sunday evening, Sarah texted, the board meeting had gone well. Comprehensive policy changes were approved. Coach Richardson's name would be added to a database that tracked coaches terminated for misconduct. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I sat by my window, watching the sunset. Tomorrow, I'd wake up, go to school, attend practice with a coach who respected boundaries. I'd work on college applications, focusing on schools chosen for academics rather than swimming prominence. My Olympic dreams had died, but I was still here. The investigation was over. Coach was gone. The system that enabled him was being reformed. But trauma doesn't end with administrative action. Healing would take time. Trust would need to be rebuilt. Some days would be harder than others. I thought about the note in my locker, the girl in calculus, all the swimmers who'd suffered in silence. We'd broken the pattern. Future girls would be safer because we spoke up. That had to be enough. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. The team was going for pizza after practice tomorrow. Was I interested? I typed back yes. Moving forward meant taking small steps. Pizza with teammates who'd stood by me seemed like a good place to start. I closed my blinds and turned to my homework. Life continued, different, but not destroyed. Coach Richardson had tried to break us, but we'd broken his hold instead. In the end, that was our real victory. Not the administrative leave or policy changes, but the simple fact that we'd survived and protected others. The pool would always carry echoes of what happened, but it was ours now, not his. Every lap swam freely, every practice without fear, every girl who felt safe to just be an athlete. That was our legacy. It wasn't the Olympics, but it mattered more.